online on the city's website. Secretary Ballinger, would you please call the roll?
Yes, it'll be my pleasure. Mr. Kearsley,
Here we go. Here.
you, Commissioner Moran,
Here.
Commissioner Weston,
Here.
Vice Chair Davenport,
Here.
and Chair Oler.
Here. The next order of our agenda is public communications. As some attendees may be participating in their first Walnut Creek Pros Commission meeting or their first teleconference meeting, I want to welcome everyone and talk briefly about the public comment process. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the Commission cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed, request clarification, or refer the item to staff. When I open the public comment period, use the raise hand feature or press 9 if you are connected by audio only, which will alert staff that you have a public comment you would like to provide. Please wait your turn, and once brought into the meeting, state your name and city of residence for the record. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. Does any member of the public wish to speak on an item not on the agenda? At this time, I'm asking Secretary Ballinger if there are any members of the public who would like to provide comments.
We do not have any hands raised at this time.
Okay, moving on to the consent calendar portion of our agenda. We have the approval of minutes of the regular meeting of August 3rd, 2020. This is the last meeting that we held. Can I have a request to approve that?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Secretary Ballinger, can you call the roll on this?
Vice Chair Davenport,
Yes.
Commissioner Moran,
Yes.
Commissioner Weston, Commissioner Weston,
Yes.
Commissioner Kearsley,
Yes.
and Chair Oler.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Very good. The next order on our agenda is a consideration of the Pros Commission meeting schedule for 2021. Do we have any questions or comments from the commission, or are we ready to move approval? Do I have a motion for approval? Thank you.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Weston,
Yes.
Commissioner Moran,
Yes.
Commissioner Kearsley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davenport,
Yes.
and Chair Oler.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Our second item under considerations is the citywide trail improvement plan review. This is for commission consideration. Citywide plan review will be reviewed by staff to make a presentation on this. I believe we have two staff members that are visible and will be presenting on this topic.
That's correct.
Please go ahead and introduce yourself and start the presentation. I know there's some coordination with the visuals, perhaps.
Thank you, Chair Oler, and good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mike Vickers. I'm the Public Works Manager responsible for parks, open space, and our trail system. Tonight, Interim Supervisor, Open Space Supervisor Corey Frazier and I will be presenting the trail use recommendations that were recently developed by a subcommittee of your peers. Before I jump into the presentation, I do want to mention a couple things. First of all, this document and project took somewhere around 15 to 16 months, so there's a fair amount of content. This presentation is going to be somewhere between 30 and 40 minutes tonight. And because of the amount of content, we did number the slides. I hope they're showing up. And as you guys are going through the process and developing questions, if you can write down which slide, it'll be easier for us to go back and forth to help address any of those questions at that time. So moving on to the next slide, to the agenda. I'll jump in. I'm going to start off by giving a brief introduction. Then I'm going to mention the vision and the goals within the general plan, touch on a description of our general trails throughout the open space, and then Corey's really going to narrow in on the trail use recommendations, modifications, improvements, education, and outreach. And we'll finish with a summary that is going to provide the commissioners with a list of recommendations for them to consider. Next slide, please. Introduction. In regards to the members, we invited a number of volunteers from a variety of user groups to participate in this process, including equestrians, bikers, hikers, several members of the Open Space Foundation, staff, including management and rangers. And because we did not want this to be a staff-led project, we asked that Chair Oler and Commissioner Davenport of the Park Recreation Open Space co-chair this process. Now, I'm not going to name all the volunteers that participated in this program. However, they are listed on the back page of the report. I did want to just take a moment and thank them for their time and remind them that their efforts into this project are only going to make the open space and the community better. So I appreciate all of your work. The purpose. In early 2019, we formed a subcommittee to document the current state of the open space trails and develop a list of recommendations for its future. The recommendations primarily focused on the safety of the users, protection of the natural resources, habitat restoration, education and public outreach, open space policies, enforcement, and other opportunities. The process itself, as I mentioned earlier, this process took about 15 or 16 months, and for the most part, we completed the project just before COVID, and then we started writing the document. It's important to point out that all this was a very positive experience. And as many of you go out through the open space, from time to time, you will find challenges or conflicts with other users. We found the same thing working amongst ourselves. However, we compromised in order to come up with a positive experience and a positive list of recommendations. Anytime we were challenged, we always focused on one thing. We have to find a balance between protecting the environment and ensuring that the user is having an enjoyable open space experience. Next slide, please. Okay, so moving on to the general plan. For those of you who are not familiar with the general plan is a long-range plan. In this case, it's a 20-year plan, and it's the city's primary tool to direct and manage growth and conservation. Chapter 3 of our general plan focuses on the natural environment and public spaces. For the most part, parks, open space, and our trail system. If you want to read more about this, you could. The document is online. But the vision of Chapter 3 is really clear. Preserves and manages the integrity of the natural environment, protects and expands access to natural resources, including the open space and trails. The goals within Chapter 3, very similar to the policies. Maintain, enhance, acquire additional open space, and provide accessibility to all users. The policies within Chapter 3 of our general plan: protect, manage, improve, enhance the natural environment, provide public access to the open space, promote safety on all trails and roads leading to the trails, and regularly assess specific user groups and needs and abilities. These are the guiding principles and policies utilized by the committee as we move through the process. Sorry, Heather, can you just move to 2 slides forward, please? So, brief description of our trails. For the purpose of this document, our trails are broken into 3 categories. We have single track trails, which are typically 4 feet in width, fire roads, which are 8 or more feet in width, and often referred to as double track trails. And then the third category is social trails, which are unauthorized and unmaintained trails. With a few exceptions, single track trails are reserved for hikers and equestrians. Fire roads allow for the use of bikes, hikers, and equestrians, and provide access for staff and emergency vehicles. Social trails, many of them developed, within the last 2 or 3 decades, in some cases, were developed either by wildlife, they were developed by cattle, or by the user. And as I mentioned, these trails are typically unauthorized, but as we move through the process, we have developed a plan for some of these longer term trails to eventually become authorized. And Corey will share more of those details. So in regards to observations made by the committee, the increase in population, not only in Walnut Creek, but in the surrounding areas, have definitely led to more visits in our open space, as has COVID. More and more people are enjoying the outdoors and developing new outdoor hobbies. And what we're finding, not just in the open space, I know that the recreation team is seeing a much more use at the golf course and youth soccer. We're seeing more commuters on bicycles, getting to work and also getting to school. Trail use for certain groups is changing. We are seeing far less equestrians, and as I mentioned, more bicycles. There's an increase in the usage and the formation of unauthorized social trails. And we've seen a lot more of that since the 2018 fire in North Lime Ridge. When the vegetation started to burn back and decline, some of those unauthorized trails were expanded. Other trails were developed through that fire area, and it is going to take a number of years to recover. There's also been an uptake in communication regarding trail safety, meaning staff has been receiving much more feedback from the users. Inappropriate activity on single tracks has led to damaged habitat and created additional environmental issues. Now, in regards to some of the challenges that were addressed by the committee, and as I mentioned before, the biggest challenge is we all have to find a balance between preservation and recreation. There is no reason why we cannot work together in order to preserve and also enjoy our experience in the open space. We have to ensure the trails are safe. We have to manage the speed of bicycles. We have to manage the areas in which hikers and runners are using. We need to be aggressive in our trail management plan to help minimize the environmental impacts. For example, a couple years ago, the community spoke quite loudly about the displeasure of having the cattle roaming through the trail system in the wintertime or in the wet months and the pock marks it was leaving on the trails. It made some of these trails impassable. We heard the feedback and we moved strongly towards, along with the support of the commission and the city council, towards a rotational cattle grazing program to keep the cows off of the trails, to provide a more enjoyable experience, and to provide the safety required to be using the open space. Most importantly, we can't do this alone, meaning staff. The Walnut Creek Open Space Foundation leads a lot of our, if not all of our restoration preservation projects. And we are going to be calling on the community for volunteers. Corey will get more into that, but I can't express it enough. A staff of 6, we cannot do this work alone. We're going to need your help and support. Okay, moving on to public contact. My last slide, and then I'm going to turn it over to Corey. This has been, public contact means a lot of different things. And obviously the rangers and staff have been in contact with the users for decades. And the approach has always been, and it's going to continue to be, education first. And I'm not talking directly about individuals that are out not following the guidelines or the Muni Code. Just interactions with the community and the users is very important. And we want to ensure that that communication is as positive as it can be. We want the community to be reaching out, whether through email, phone call, or direct contact with the rangers. Their eyes and ears are important to us. There's only 3 rangers on site. We have approximately 3,000 acres, and only 3 days a week are all 3 rangers working, because we run a 7-day-a-week operation. So it's very challenging to be everywhere. Your communication is extremely important. Education first. What we're discussing now, and I see the word citations up there, I don't want that to alarm anyone. We are currently talking about that at a management level. I do not have all the answers for you. If you do have answers tonight regarding what would a citation fine look like, would that be a misdemeanor? Would that just be a municipal code violation? Certainly not going to be a misdemeanor, but we have not worked through all the details. So if you do have questions, please feel free to ask them. However, I may not have all the answers for you tonight. We will be updating the Pros Commission at a future meeting and get that information out to the public if that is the road we choose to go down. Education first. We are talking about bringing back our written warning program. And then for severe violations, we are going to be talking and potentially introducing citations. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Corey.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, everyone. My name is Corey Frazier. Like Mike mentioned, the acting open space supervisor. I'll be taking us through the rest of these slides here. So let's dive into trail use. We've talked a lot about the evaluation of the open space trail system. And as we evaluate the state of the open space system, trends are being seen with user groups. Is the current state of the trail system safe and sustainable? Are plants and wildlife appropriately protected? Are there opportunities to convert single tracks into safe and sustainable multi-use trails? And what other improvements can be made? The trail system trends. So obviously, if you visited the open space recently, you would have noticed some of these trends. And since the pandemic started, a lot of these trends are even more apparent. Essentially, we've seen a significant increase in almost all user groups. The only user group we have not seen a significant increase in is from equestrians. It seems as if over the recent years, equestrian use has user safety, plants and wildlife, and trail sustainability.
Corey, can I interrupt you just for a minute?
Yes.
I apologize.
You're good.
You're breaking up on my end, and I'm not sure if it's just me or if it's with others as well. Heather, can you confirm that he is breaking up?
Yes,
Corey?
breaking up. So maybe a different location, or is it?
Yeah,
Corey, do you
I'm gonna
Corey,
come
do you
over.
mind grabbing your paperwork and coming into here, please? We're just in separate offices, Heather. Just bear with us for 1 second, please.
All right. How about that? Can you guys hear me now? All right. Sorry about that. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on to the next. Well, let me redo this one here. So, obviously, if you visited the open space recently, you would have noticed some of these trends. Since the pandemic started, a lot of these trends are even more apparent. Essentially, we've seen a significant increase in almost all user groups. The only group we have not seen a significant increase in is from equestrians. It seems as if equestrian use has gone down in recent years. The committee recognizes the importance of taking these trends into consideration when making management recommendations. If not managed properly, these trends could potentially have a negative impact to user safety, plants and wildlife, and trail sustainability. Next slide, please. Multi-use trails. So one of the major topics of discussion and perceived needs by some is an increase in available multi-use trails, specifically of the single track or narrow trail variety. Multi-use trails allow access to all user groups, with the main challenge being, can we allow access to all user groups and still have these trails be safe and sustainable? So currently in our trail system, we have about just over 20 miles of fire roads. So those are the roads about 8 feet. We have approximately 17.5 miles of single track trail, about 4 feet or less. And then approximately 5 miles of social trails, give or take, networking throughout our open space areas. Next slide, please. So nature trails. In order to achieve a balance between recreation and preservation, the committee recommends that some trails be considered to be designated as nature trails. These trails would restrict certain uses and be focused on preservation and education and plants and wildlife, protecting plants and wildlife habitat. These trails would need to be identified, and ideally they would have some interpretive signage, and they would be kind of an area or trail that where you could get away from some of the other activities, some of the multi-use activity, and just kind of find a bit of solitude. Next slide, please. So I've talked about some of the perceived needs and the potential to redesignate certain trails to allow or restrict certain uses. So how do we go about officially changing use? The committee recommends adopting a process of change in use similar to East Bay Regional Park District and the California State Park System. Essentially, it's a thorough evaluation of a particular trail or trail segment that uses a set of guidelines and criteria to determine whether or not a trail is suitable for certain activities. As you can see on the slide, the criteria is broken down into 4 main categories. One being user safety, plant and wildlife protection, trail sustainability, and trail circulation. So this is a form we adopted, or not adopted completely, but the committee looked at the process that East Bay Regional Parks goes through in the California State Park System, and they have a pretty thorough evaluation form. We borrowed some aspects of that and created a form that matches our trail system better. And it's a pretty thorough evaluation, total 5 pages, and it goes into depth and into a lot of different aspects of the trail system. So next slide, please. So multi-use guidelines. In addition to the criteria described in the previous slide, the committee recommends adopting a set of guidelines to be used as a baseline for trail evaluation. So trails should have a minimum of 48 inches with adequate room to move off trail to yield. Vegetation cleared should be 8 feet wide and 10 feet up. Minimum line of sight should equal 100 feet or more. And trail gradient should not exceed an average of 10% with a max of 12% for short distances. Ideally, in order to be considered for multi-use, 75% of the trail system, 75% of the trail being evaluated should meet the guidelines as is or through mitigation to help meet these guidelines. Next slide, please. So, change in use procedure. Listed here is the proposed CIU procedure, essentially the steps the city would take to change a trail's designation. So after adopting the trail evaluation criteria checklist, the checklist would be completed by members of a designated evaluation team made up primarily of open space staff and/or appointees. The findings and evaluations submitted to the Public Works Director or his or her designee for final determination. And if necessary, further evaluations would be submitted to the Pros Commission for recommendation. If a CIU is recommended and approved, timelines for designation change would be established based on priority and other factors. Next slide, please. Modifications and improvements. So as we look at the existing trail system, we see, as Mike mentioned, there are numerous social trails networking throughout the open space. Some of these trails are shortcuts. Some offer desirable linkages to existing trails. Some were created by animals, others adopted by people, and some were created by certain user groups. There are a number of trails, social trails, that are sustainable and in relatively good shape, and that the committee recommends should be considered as official trails and maintained by open space staff. On the other hand, there are trails that are overused, suffer from major erosion, and are not sustainable with the current rate of use. The committee recommends these trails be closed and restoration efforts be made to rehabilitate the area. Next slide, please. So trail closures. So why close certain unauthorized trails? So we're going to go and look at a few examples here of some unsustainable use on some trails that are not official trails, and these trails are recommended for closure and restoration. As you can see in this first slide, the trail width has grown considerably. The first picture, as you can see, is in April. Next, we're looking at November. So in the span of 6-7 months, we're seeing this trail width increase dramatically. There's at least 3 lines where users are coming down. And it's pretty obvious to me that this trail is unsustainable. And we're going to look at some more examples of this in the next slide. So this is that same area, just looking down in the other direction. We're seeing heavy rutting in this area. And this is prior to really any significant rain yet this season. So as you can see in the picture, we're seeing 2 to 3 feet of rutting. So it's causing people to go up to the left and really widen out this trail. And it's having a pretty heavy impact on this area. I mean, just in the last 6 months, the tread on this particular trail has grown maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times what it once was. And as soon as we get some rain, it's going to get a lot worse. So it is an area that we're looking to close down. Next slide, please. So this is another example of unsustainable use leading to heavy erosion, exposing some tree roots. If left unmitigated, it's likely we will see some undercutting of these tree roots, which could lead damage to the tree and users widening the area even further to avoid the hazard. Next slide, please. So this is that same area just above. As you can see here, just another example of how wide the trail is in this particular section. And you can really tell that the soil in this picture, it's loose soil, so it's subject to erosion, and potentially could get a lot worse if left unmitigated. Next slide, please. So this is another example of unsustainable trail use. You can kind of tell from the picture, it's a really steep drop off, really wide trail tread. I wish I had a picture of this area prior to this, or maybe 6 or a year ago. And as you can see in the picture, it's in really bad shape. If you go down the slope even further, you're seeing some exposed tree roots. And it could potentially have caused major damage to these trees, and the soil and sediment itself is just really not in good shape, not sustainable. It's not something we like to see out in the open space. Next slide, please. So what we see here is the destruction and removal of plant material in a dense chaparral habitat in Lime Ridge. This area is closed, but we see continued use of the area despite staff efforts to close it and let the vegetation regrow. Which is a pretty elaborate setup. You've got berms and jumps and, like I mentioned, destruction of plant material. So the people that are doing this, they're going through a lot of effort to make this happen, and going around staff's efforts to close this area. And this has been an ongoing battle for years. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we see an area that was closed back in February of this year. There was pushback from initially there was pushback from some users that cut down fencing and signs and removed the logs and branches used to block this trail off. We have managed, however, to keep most users off this trail and are starting to see regrowth of vegetation in the area. As you can see on the left, looks pretty bare. On the right, we're already starting to see some regrowth, which is encouraging. We are confident that if we are able to keep people off of these areas and users off of some of these areas, that they will make a full recovery. We will see vegetation regrow, and we will be able to restore and revegetate some of these trails that are in really rough shape. Next slide, please. All right, so on this slide, we have a map depicting some of the trails that are under consideration to be added as official trails, as well as some areas the committee feels should be closed. The trails lined in green are social trails that primarily fall into the category as safe and sustainable and should be considered for official use. They would still need to be evaluated using the CIU criteria checklist. And it's important to note that this map does not depict all potential closures. We are seeing new social trails almost monthly, and open space is addressing them as they arise. Next slide, please. So one area that we will take a closer look at as an example of an area that's under consideration for change is the potential reroute of the Summit Ridge Trail in Shell Ridge over near the Sutherland entrance. The current trail follows the ridge line and traverses a section above the quarry that is not particularly safe. The committee and open space staff recommend that the trail be rerouted from the saddle to the northwest, and around the quarry and down to the Kovar Trail. So that's that green section there. And recommendation would be to close off the dangerous section of the trail, and as I mentioned, reroute. Next slide, please. All right, next we're going to look at an overview of trails in Lime Ridge that are under consideration for change. Similar to the Shell Ridge map, these do not depict all the areas that are potentially under consideration. These are just some of the priorities and some of the main recommendations that the committee has come up with. So as we see here, we have a couple of potential new multi-use trails. The flow trails would be designed and built to sustain bicycle use. So these are the areas and trails marked in blue. The yellow dotted trails are areas that are under consideration for closure. And the green is an existing social trail that is under consideration to be added as an official trail. Next slide, please. All right, so we're going to look a little bit closer at one of the areas that's proposed, that a proposed flow trail in South Lime Ridge. And for those unaware, a flow trail is essentially a trail designed to be traveled in one primary direction, where if on a bicycle, little pedaling or braking would be necessary. The trail would utilize the natural terrain and contain features to enhance the bike riding experience. It's important to note that the exact route of this trail has not been determined, and that further evaluation of the area would be necessary before moving forward. However, if we do move forward, we are confident that the bicycle community would be in support of the trail and assist with funding, construction, and maintenance. And as you can see in the bottom right, that is a picture of the area. The trail would be winding pretty much through non-native grasses and not impacting any chaparral habitat like some of these other trails are. Next slide, please. All right, on this slide, we have a closer look at an area in Central Lime Ridge where there's current and recommended closures of a trail referred to as Mach 5 by the bike community. The pictures on the bottom right should look familiar as they were shown in previous slides as areas identified as needing restoration. The line marked in blue is another proposed location for a multi-use flow trail, similar to the proposed flow trail in South Lime Ridge. This trail runs primarily through non-native grasses and would potentially utilize some of the natural features of the land to have a trail that is sustainable and attractive for bike use. And ideally, the flow trails would draw use off of other trails where bicycle activity is not safe and not sustainable. Next slide, please. All right, in this slide, we look at an area in Lime Ridge around the large quarry just northeast of the Boundary Oak Golf Course. This area features some unique terrain that brings many user groups to the various trails that run through the quarries. The committee sees value to having some of these trails available for use and recommends that they be evaluated and one primary route be left open for use. The primary trail through the area is depicted on the map. There are several other trails in the area that are unsafe and unsustainable for use and should be closed off. As you can see in the bottom left corners, sorry about that. So we've got two areas that are going to be potentially closed off. And those areas are marked in yellow. And as I mentioned, the main trail that is pretty safe and pretty sustainable is marked in blue. All right, next slide. Ah, there we go. That's what I'm missing, those pictures. Okay, thought so. All right. So as I mentioned, the top left, top right are examples of some of the unsustainable use. The picture on the top left, we looked at earlier, and that's the location of that particular trail section. And in the top right, is indicating that trail there. And it's basically a trail that's created, we think, by bicyclists. It's kind of very steep and just goes directly down the fall line. And it is a pretty hazardous trail. I occasionally see hikers try to traverse down it, and they struggle to do so. So appropriate signage and closures are going to be necessary to keep people off of these areas. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this goes back and looks at the area in South Lime Ridge. This is a Google Earth image of that particular area. And as I mentioned before, heads through primarily non-native grasses. And so this is just another view of the location for that multi-use flow trail that's been proposed. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, we have examples of some new signage that has gone up around the open space. Open space staff continues to identify areas where new or updated signage is appropriate. Multi-use trail signage was designed to make users aware of a multi-use trail. Trail courtesy signs were developed and placed throughout the trail system to promote proper trail etiquette. Not a trail signs and area closed signs are placed to discourage use in certain areas and encourage users to stay on designated trails. Other signage recommendations not yet implemented or shown here include larger signs on trails informing users that bicyclists are prohibited in the area. Next slide, please. Education and outreach. So as the number of open space users continue to grow, it's important that the value of the open space be spread through education and outreach. This means improved and continued communication with users, whether it be through direct contact with rangers, up-to-date information in kiosks, signage, or through programs. The main goal being that we achieve a balance between recreation and preservation, and that the open space is safely used by all user groups. Next slide, please. So community engagement. To achieve the goals outlined by the committee, it'll take a collaborative effort, as Mike mentioned earlier. The help of volunteers goes a long way in the effort to maintain, protect, and preserve the open space. The committee recommends the city facilitate the formation of a volunteer patrol group to help educate users on certain restrictions and assist rangers with the enforcement of rules and regulations. I'd like to also take this opportunity to publicly thank the volunteers that currently help out in the open space, including the Open Space Foundation and the Trail Dog. Your help is much appreciated. All right, and at this point, I will turn it over to Mike to summarize and go over the priorities and recommendations.
So hopefully you can hear me okay, commissioners. In summary, what we'd like from you at the end of this meeting is to give us a thumbs up or a nod on the first 5 recommendations that you see on this slide. The 6th one, as I mentioned during my presentation, is probably getting a little ahead of ourselves. Since I don't have all those details, I would rather set that aside for now and come back to update the commission and the community as a whole on what that's enforcement process is going to look like in terms of citations. So in summary, prioritize and close unauthorized social trails and restore the areas. Actively monitor and inform the public through contact and signage. Evaluate open space single track trails through the checklist and make recommendations on changes to trail designation. Explore possibility of new multi-use flow trails throughout all of the open space and to redistribute use away from unsustainable areas. Continue and encourage community engagement through the volunteer process. Facilitate formation of trail advocacy groups and volunteer patrol. Next please, Heather. So now I'm going to turn it back over to you, Chair Oler, and open it up for questions and comments.
Thank you, Mike and Corey. We're going to go back to a panel format. Thank you. Appreciate the presentation to give us insights into the development of that the document that was distributed publicly earlier as well. And I know a lot of work went into that, and a lot of good work went into that. It's now time for the commission to ask any questions regarding what you've seen or read in the report. And Mike and Corey are available to answer those questions. So it's suggested that we use the raised hand. We may or may not need that for our commission here. I think you can just unmute and we'll hear you and see you and recognize you. But either way, it doesn't matter to me. So do we have questions at this point, Commission?
I have a question.
Commissioner Moran.
I know this might be kind of a difficult one to answer because I know you can't quantify it. I spend my time in the Acalanes for the most part, and it's just normally me up there. I've noticed more people since the pandemic has started, but there's just not a lot of bikers up there. So my question is, and this is just to maybe the group generally, what has the mood been as far as any contention? I know it's become more popular in the open spaces, but Mike, what you said, I really I wrote down. You said we need to find a nice compromise and balance for the words that you use, and I like that. And I'm wondering how far down the road are we? And this is coming from somebody because I don't really know where all sides are talking, not talking. Kind of, does that make sense? I'll stop talking now.
Yeah, it does. And Corey, once I'm finished, if you have anything to add, what I didn't share, because I think the majority of including the people that are watching we've been having discussions about the use of the trail system for years. I mean, it goes back to the 2007 Open Space Vision Report, where there were discussions at that time. The trail use in terms of bicycles and hikers and just users in general has really picked up. And a lot of those images that Corey showed you may or may not have been started by bicycles, but they are certainly used by all users. More particularly the areas in Lime Ridge, I often see runners and walkers in those areas that you would think were just created by bicyclists. I don't very often see equestrians over in that area, but the problem is not just one user versus another. What I was getting at earlier is Bob Simmons, I think most of you are aware, started what would be the best way to put it? Just a community format where he started organizing some public meetings, and he had 4 or 5 of those meetings. I think the last couple, he had 60 to 70 people in the meetings, and there were representatives from bicycle users to equestrians and hikers and runners, dog walkers, the whole bit. And at times, when you're dealing with people's wants and people's needs, and people are sensitive to their safety, not everybody sees eye to eye. And we didn't always see eye to eye, as I mentioned, in the committee. But we knew we had to work through this. We knew the only way to get to where we were going to find that balance was to, okay, let me stop and pause for a minute and understand what this other person's perspective is. When you take equestrians, and equestrians, although the numbers it appears to be declining, those people are on 2,000-3,000 pound animals with brains of their own. And those animals can really get freaked out and cause some serious damage. And so you really have to be sensitive when you're in and around that type of situation. you know, in addition, we're talking about e-bikes, right? And the trends with e-bikes, and what is that going to lead to in the future? Right now, motorized vehicles, unauthorized motorized vehicles are not permitted in the open space, and that includes e-bikes. But e-bikes are growing very quickly. The challenge with e-bikes is the downhill speed, but more so the uphill speed. And when they come around these sharp corners, and that's why that criteria, that CIU checklist that Corey put together that we'll be evaluating in terms of sight distance is really important to keep everybody safe. We need to, and one of the benefits, and this is why we keep pushing it, really, to be honest with you, Commissioner, is to get volunteers from all the user groups out to help restore what we're working on out there. If we can get everybody working together, we can open up the lines of communication and have people start understanding what some of the other concerns are instead of just what their own focuses are. So I mean, that was a long-winded answer. I apologize. There's no easy way around it other than trying to bring people together and, you know, open up their different points of view.
Thank you. And I'll let somebody else. What I wanted to also include is that I appreciate, I just want to say thank you, because I clearly can tell a lot of work went in this to all the volunteers and staff and my colleagues on the commission as well. But I think it's really well written and well thought out, and you can read that in the text. So I will step away and let somebody else ask a question.
Chair Ruler. Okay.
I'm sure.
Thank you. I have a comment and then a question, and I want to thank Mike and Corey for the presentation, and of course all the work from the chair and Commissioner Davenport for their work on the report. My comment is this: for the last 9 months, my wife and I have been hiking almost every week up in Lime Ridge. We park at Boundary Oak. We go up the Ohlone Trail. We then head on the Manzanita Trail. We go down the Buckeye Trail. We come back on the Ohlone Trail. We hit the Blue Oak Trail, back on the Ohlone Trail, and then back to the parking lot. Takes about an hour and 15 minutes. Great exercise, just walking. So I'm very familiar with what's been happening there. I'm very familiar with the severe erosion that's happened from bikes. I'm very aware of the berms that have now been created from parts of the trails. I'm very aware of the single track trails that are used regularly by bikes. And also the jumps that are very inviting for everyone that have been created or have naturally occurred in terms of being able to jump off certain things. And I'll also say that I am a mountain biker. I do go to these areas too, so I do support that very much. And my question has to do with, I guess, around the idea of the multi-use track or creating multi-use. I saw the diagrams and the suggested paths. Are those existing trails that are, say, already near to being what would be required for multi-use? In other words, you know, an 8-foot wide trail, or are they more akin to something single track and there is require, you know, kind of a bit of upgrading and doing all those things? Or I'm just curious to the extent that you know, would be required to create that multi-use. And one more comment, you know, for the suggested areas that are suggested to be closed off, I find that may be very useful for bikers as well. Certainly if they're closed off for a period of time and then maybe can be revisited to be used, because I can tell you from watching the bikers, it's getting more challenging for them, almost too challenging on a lot of the trails, because there's so many ruts and the sand deposits and all those things. So it certainly worked both ways in terms of if there is ideas of closing off certain areas, but also if they could be opened up. But going back to the multi-use.
So Corey, do you mind addressing that?
Sure. So the new proposed multi-use trails, in those areas, there isn't really anything existing currently. So those trails would be designed and built in sort of new dimensions, and not necessarily be 8 feet. I mean, these would be flow trails that would be built potentially for primarily bike use. So the idea behind those is to redirect some of the use onto these flow trails and away from some of these other trails where the use just isn't sustainable. So the new trails that you saw indicated on the map in blue, there's not really anything there currently. And so these are just areas that have been identified as potentially good areas for a new multi-use trail, not like anything that we currently have.
Okay, so like I said, they're not necessarily leveraging existing trails that might have been also created by bikes or other users, you know, that have created a new trail. They could be actually making something brand new just for bikes.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioner questions?
I have one more. Again, this is not an easy one to answer. So you know, because it's not it's more general and maybe not quantifiable. But I am wondering, just as somebody who if somebody else spends a lot of time in Lime Ridge, for example, and I know the answer to this in terms of one of the pictures that I think Corey showed is that it was one of the trails that somebody had actually taken a fence down in order to get around. So there's a percentage, obviously, of people who know what they're not supposed to do and then do it anyway. And I know that education and signage are going to help with that. But I guess my question is, am I correct in thinking that the majority of people who right now are misusing some of the trails or just otherwise knowing what the rules are and abusing them anyway, is that larger than the percentage of people that maybe don't know, you know, or they're there for like the first time and they think, well, I don't know if this is a trail, but I'm going to use it. Or I didn't know I couldn't use single track trails on a bike or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging, right? You know, 95% of the users are following or doing their best to follow the rules. They are conscientious of who's around them, what plant materials around them, what the environment's like. They stop and pull over for whatever users coming up or going down a trail. It's the smaller percentage of individuals are the ones that are cutting the fencing, trying to go around and get back onto those trails that they just have a strong desire to use, even though we are working hard to close them off. So, yes, are there you know, people out there using the single track trails when they know they're not supposed to and are still pulling over and being courteous to others? Yes. That certainly exists, but 95% of our users, all users, are doing their best to follow the rules and, you know, trying to be good citizens and good visitors.
That's a great answer, Mike. Thank you.
Commissioner Weston?
Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of the folks on the committee for, you know, an amazing piece of work here that will give us a lot of insight on how to move forward. And I'm concerned about how we actually can move forward with this. There's a great deal of work to be done. We don't have a lot of staff to coordinate it. So I'm a little confused. Is the committee going to continue on with the work, or is their work stopping with this document? And then where does this Trail Advocacy Committee come in? Who would they report to? What really are they? Have we considered that side of it?
Yeah, so a few questions in there, Commissioner Weston. We're not ready to disband the committee yet. We still have some things to work out in terms of enforcement, and that I want to get feedback from the committee before we go back to the commission. We also may be asked some questions here shortly that we need to get together and come back with some answers. I know that we've I've heard through some of the comments and emails that have come in that we haven't done a thorough enough job about addressing dogs and how dogs are controlled out in the open space. We may, as a committee, get back and address some of those. The other thing is this is a fluid document. This is going to be updated as needed. And I hope to keep the volunteers on the subcommittee available to review any information that we're putting out, over the next few years. And I apologize, I lost your last question there. Oh, I know what it was. Sorry. In terms of volunteers, we have started a volunteer process, Corey and the other rangers. We have just lightly danced around it. I think it was last Friday, we had about 6 or 8 volunteers out along with staff. We haven't really pushed it. You guys may not even have heard about it yet. When Mr. Simmons was organizing his public meetings, there was a very strong push from all users to get out there and volunteer. Volunteering in maintaining trails and habitat and restoration is not unique. Some of these individuals I met with and spoke to were going down to Santa Cruz, and there'd be 50, 60 people at a time going out there and helping to restore these. So I really believe that Walnut Creek is a community of volunteers and that we will find the volunteers to get this work done. However, if we didn't, it would just take longer to move forward. We may need to get some contractors involved and some other help in terms of that nature, but I think that we're going to have a strong support from volunteers.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other further questions from the commission?
Chair Oler, are there going to be, in terms of comment period, would this be the time to make additional comments or?
Yeah, so what we'll do now is we're going to open up for public comment, Commissioner Kearsley. And following that, then we will resume our comments regarding the report before we take a vote as to whether to endorse the recommendation.
Okay, then I'll hold off on my comment.
All right. Then I'd like to, at this point, allow for public comment. And I'll ask the question, does any member of the public wish to provide public comment at this time? Please use the raise hand feature or press 9 if you are connected by audio only, if you would like to provide a public comment. And I'll ask Secretary to whether there are members of the public standing by with proposed comments.
Yes, there are. There's several people that want to speak tonight, and I just would remind everybody that it's a 2-minute speaking time, and the clock will show up on the screen. And the first speaker is Clayton. We'll be bringing him in.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. I sent an email in yesterday. It was a couple of pages long. I'm not sure if anybody had the chance to read it or got eyesight weariness and didn't read the whole thing. But if you hadn't read it, I would really appreciate that you do. I've been a resident for 20 plus years. I'm 58 years old. I've mountain biked over 1,000 miles this year, predominantly in the Walnut Creek area, but also in Park City, Utah, Santa Cruz, a lot up in Truckee and Tahoe, Marin County, etc. And I just wanted to focus in on kind of 3 areas in the email I sent yesterday. Aside from safety of being forced to use limited fire roads, which are really not trails, I wanted to kind of single in on, I believe single track is actually safer than these fire roads that we're relegated to. I have a couple points on that. Multi-use has been done very successfully elsewhere within the Bay Area and across the United States in communities that take a more progressive view of mountain bikes and don't treat it as something that's 20 years old and is being managed like a street bike. And then based upon what I've seen with regards to the acceptable use criteria, would love to see the commission take a different look or expand the look at and see what other communities have done in this area to manage this. So single track, you can't go as fast, because if you go too fast, you're going to go off of the trail. And in fact, with regards to single track, it's not commonly defined as 4 feet. The single track by the mountain biking community is basically the width of one bicycle. I see I've run out of my time. Can I have a few more seconds here?
You know, we do have your comments, your letter, and those are provided to the commission staff or the commission as well. So we've had an opportunity to review that. I do appreciate your comments, Clayton.
Okay, last one then. I would just state that using the state of California and the East Bay public parks as your definition of acceptable use criteria is way too narrow. It's been well managed in Park City and elsewhere where everybody can ride, walk, and hike on single tracks that are true single tracks and not 4 feet or greater. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker is James Page.
Hi, folks. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say I'm a hiker and a mountain biker. Use the trails at Lime Ridge very frequently. And I have great appreciation for the efforts that you folks put into the presentation, all the research that went into that. I want to say that being able to use those trails, especially as a mountain biker, but also running and hiking, has made a big difference in my life. I previously may have been someone who didn't always follow the rules, and efforts to see mountain bikers included and acknowledged have really made a difference and brought me to being now someone who follows the rules. Always happy to dismount and let other users go by, and love to volunteer and work on trails. So really appreciate seeing mountain bikers included in the discussion. I can't represent all mountain bikers, but I think you'll find most mountain bikers are very happy to contribute, and also appreciative of the being included in the conversation. And then similar to the last speaker, I really appreciate seeing flow trails being included here, because it allows for a great experience without going that fast. The fire roads, the challenge is that they are often steep and they're really wide, and so the only thing to do is to go fast. But the flow trails really allow you to go just running speed, or even walking speed, and have a good time. And again, to summarize, this has really made a big difference in my life. And I know a lot of folks who otherwise might not have come to appreciate the wildlife who really do now. So thanks for all your hard work, and thanks for including mountain bikes in the conversation.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker says Concord Chamber.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, that's my work number. Up my 10 seconds. It looks like I need a clock reset. Give me my 2. Thank you. My name's Kevin Cabral. I'm a Concord resident. Lived here all my life. I appreciate the efforts that everybody's doing right now out at Lime Ridge. I'm a heavy user out there, and Shell Ridge. A 2 to 3 day a week person, both mornings and evenings. And it is correct. There's heavy usage out there right now. I think the plan is well thought out. It's a great next step. And I also feel that everybody's correct that the timing is right now for the community to get together and provide volunteer hours. I was with a large group of people that went to all the Bob Simmons meetings. I thought they were very productive. I think some of the information for tonight came from those meetings. So it's awesome that you guys keep moving this forward. The trail is impacted, especially since the fire. Being a lover of that open space, you know, it's been kind of sad to see. And I do think the directional signage you're putting out there now and blocking things out, the efforts by all of the community that uses out there to help protect trails. And, you know, I was there building the fences. I think that works. And if we can continue to move in that direction, I feel that the large population of users out there that I know are ready to give up their time, their efforts, and even some money to help move this forward. I'd love to know the timeline when the flow trail is estimated to maybe start. And if there's any kind of, I keep abreast of the situation. So if we could expedite those efforts, I think that would really relieve some of the heavy used areas in both Lime Ridge and Shell Ridge. So thank you very much. I appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the great work.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Our next speaker is Dan Woods.
Mute. There you go. There you go. Try that again. Maybe you can hear me at least.
Yes, we can.
All right, I'll try to start the video. Try. I don't know. Whatever. Video looks like it failed. Anyway, appreciate what the committee has done, what the commission's doing. I'm not very familiar with the Lime Ridge properties. Do spend a lot of time in Shell Ridge, been running, trail running, hiking, and walking dogs out there for 27 years and volunteering, and spent a lot of time in the area. Anyway, didn't see any opportunities for Shell Ridge for multi-use, and that's primarily, it presumably is based on a 48-inch minimum width limitation. So I presume that's conscientious, that there's nothing going to be done there. The other is I don't see on the map, your page 23, where the Shell Ridge entrance or the Shell Ridge area, specifically Sunburst and Benham Court, is even on the map. So I presume nothing is being done there as far as trails go. So like I said, I appreciate what you guys are doing. I presume that the multi-use proposal that you had talked about doing for all of the single track trails, which by definition is 4 feet or smaller, and for a multi-use it has to be 4 feet minimum. So that pretty much excludes almost all single tracks I know of. So for what it's worth. But like I said, I appreciate and see the social trails that you have started or you're going to legitimize using. Those are good ones. And the couple of the single track trails that you're closing, which makes sense. For example, one up at the top of Ginder Ridge, and been spent a lot of time on those trails, running and riding. So thanks for what you guys are doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Nadine.
Nadine, you're currently muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 minutes. I have to race through this. So I've been a resident of Walnut Creek for about 35 years. I've hiked Shell Ridge mostly, almost every week I've been here. I support mountain biking, but I don't feel comfortable with the proposal as it's moving forward because I don't believe that there's going to be adequate enforcement. And currently, every single time I'm on a very narrow trail, there are cyclists, often racing, and I'm not comfortable with it. I'm an environmentalist and I support it in my career, public recreation. I don't think it's okay the way it is. And unless there's some certainty that there's going to be enforcement, I would never be comfortable with it the way it is. I think there's a lot of great work that's been done and I'd like to see it go forward, continuing to do it. But let's not put the cart before the horse. There should be funds for enforcement before you start opening up or saying it's okay to go on some of these other trails. And also, I just want to say that I do think that the report is deficient in the sense that we are all supposed to be able to get along together. And so on. I can't tell you how many times I've had, when I politely remind someone it's not a bicycle trail that they're on, when I get just angrily hashed out, towards like their hostility towards me. And I've come to the conclusion, based on what I've read and what I've experienced, that there is no compatibility between hikers who really actually kind of want a different experience. That is not addressed in this report. There's hiking, and then there's hiking to be in a more serene place, and that doesn't work with cyclists. So my suggestion is, rather than forcing people to try to share these narrower trails, that there be specific ones for bicycles and specific ones for hikers. And if necessary, alternate days, or build more trails, whatever. Cyclists should have trails as well. I'm all supportive of that. But if you do endorse the recommendations today, I urge that you add a provision that requiring that funds be prioritized for training and enforcement staff in advance of many of the other measures that you're talking about that would open up new areas. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Our next speaker is Leslie Hunt.
Leslie, you're muted now.
Okay, can you hear?
You're muted again.
All right, how is that?
That's good, Leslie.
Okay, we're sharing this one microphone. So this is Bill's turn and I'll say something later.
Okay, I'm Bill Hunt. I'm a longtime resident of Walnut Creek and have been active in restoration in Walnut Creek's open space since 1991. I think those of us who've been out there working to restore native plants in our open space, create habitat for wildlife, and removing invasive plants are saddened to see the destruction of the natural environment that has gone on in recent years and is intensified with the COVID-19 restrictions on life. I think that when we do education, it is important that we try to give people a personal experience of the open space so that they will not see it just as an abstract virtue to protect our open space, but see it as something they feel themselves through their own personal experience. I believe that getting people out working to do the trail work, maintenance, and building authorized new trails will deepen the connection that people have with the open space. And a comment about conflicts, those do exist out here. And if you listen to people, you'll find that people who are out in the open space frequently are experiencing these contacts quite regularly now. Used to be mostly on weekends, but now it is every day of the week. We hear that through the foundation, and I hear that just talking to people in everyday life. So we can't ignore the conflicts, and we can't ignore the fact that there are people who, even if they know the rules, they feel that they are entitled to do whatever they want. I believe that we need to get people to a state where they see our open space as a rare thing and that it's a privilege that we have it and can use it. It is not a personal entitlement to go out and do what they want. I
Thank you,
think
Bill.
our education needs to be focused on creating that sense of respect for the open space and other users.
Thank you, Bill.
And
Did Leslie want 2 minutes to talk? Sorry, we lost him.
We'll bring Leslie back. She's in the queue also.
Okay.
So our next speaker is Susan Howe.
Hi, I'm Susan Howell. I'm affiliated with the Equestrian Center of Walnut Creek. I've lived in the area for 44 years now. I am not a Walnut Creek resident. And I quit riding in Lime Ridge years ago just because it really isn't suitable for equestrian. And now that the bikes have pretty much taken over, it's no longer safe. I appreciate the fact that mountain bikers love what they do, and I get that. But the safety factor is my biggest concern. And when you bring a bike into the situation, it creates danger for the hiker or the equestrian. Now, over the years, I have seen an uptick in positive safety with the bikers I encounter, which is really encouraging. I make it a point to desensitize my horses, and they are all very much used to bikes and very good, but they're still horses. And if someone comes flying up behind me around a corner or in front of me around a corner, most of the time they hear them and they're okay. But I've had bikers literally have to lay their bike down, and I've had to back my horse up about 20 steps to keep from getting plowed into. So that being said, we need to address safety. I don't know if, I'm sure a permit process would be unattainable, but the bikers seem to need more safety education. I'm sorry, let me say the 5 or 10% of the bikers that come out and think they can do whatever they want. I attended all of Bob Simmons' meetings as well. And I was encouraged by the amount of bikers that were into the safety and enjoyed what they did and were willing to work with sharing the trails. There was the other 5% that made it quite vocal at that point that, well, you know what, we're doing it anyway, so you might as well just let us. And those are the ones that we need to address with, I don't know, the policing. I don't know how you're going to approach that. Overall, again, I've seen a positive uptick in cooperation, and I really appreciate that. But I've had some real interesting experiences, and if I wasn't on the horses I was on with the training they've had, I could be dead by now, you know, on the tiny single track trails and the fire roads because of the speed. And the same with the e-bikes. E-bikes scare the crap out of me because of the speed. I have an e-bike. I enjoy it, but as an equestrian, it adds a bigger element of danger.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. Appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Craig Bender.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Thank you. I'm Craig Bender, live in South Walnut Creek. I hike and bike Shell Ridge mostly, probably 3-4 times a week. And a couple comments. One is I think Mike and Corey and team have done a wonderful job. So thank you guys for this. Your brochures and the fine print say no motorized vehicles, but there's no signage out there that says no e-bikes. I know if you go up in Tahoe, you enter a trail and there's a big sign, no e-bikes. So I think to keep e-bikes off the trails, you're going to need to increase the signage. One of the earlier speakers said, you know, hikers and bikers can share single track trails. they can, if A, they're all courteous, and B, it's not muddy out. Once the rain starts, the bikes really make a mess of single track trails. And so to be honest with you, occasionally I've gone on a single track trail, but I only do it when it's very, very dry. And once mud comes, it's a different story. So if you are going to open up even 4-foot wide trails to hikers and bikers, you need to be some signs that the bikes stay off during the mud, because that's when they can really ruin the trail. So thanks again for all your time and effort.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Our next speaker is Oren.
We're not hearing anything from a speaker. If you are trying to speak, we're not hearing you currently.
We might have lost Oren. We will be bringing in Bill Sullivan.
Bill, you're currently muted.
Yes, thank you. I'm just getting to the unmuting piece. Can people hear me?
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Okay, not to worry. I don't want to go about without trying to get that together. I just want to commend everybody for the work they've done. I think it's hugely important that we take this next step. You have to start somewhere. We had an Affordable Care Act that not everybody's happy with, but you got to start somewhere. I think you could say the same about the Transcontinental Railroad and Abraham Lincoln. The fact that we're trying to get the 5% or 6% to do the right thing, great idea. Can we do that across everything in this planet? No, because there's speed limits on the roads, and at least 5% of those people don't, abide by them. So I applaud everybody wanting to get to 100% compliance and all this. I don't think we're going to get there, so I think it's important to keep that perspective in mind. I spend at least 5 days a week up in Shell Ridge, Lime Ridge, Castle Rock, Diablo, all of those different trails on a mountain bike. I think the word mountain bike should be included in the report. We kind of skirt that. We don't even mention the fact that there are mountain bikes, because for some reason we just say bikes or cycles. So I think it's important to recognize we're talking about mountain bikes, and maybe I think Clayton had mentioned single track. I think he's absolutely right. Those flow trails, absolutely right. They're important. They make a difference. Anybody trying to speed their way down those fire trails is missing everything around them. But we don't have too many choices if that's all we have. Happy to become part of an advocacy group. Do a little heavy lifting, I'm getting along in years, but again, appreciate everything everyone is doing. Thank you. Under 2 minutes.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Chris Wickler.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, maybe you can see me too now. Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Chris Wickler. I'm a former resident of Lafayette, but a longtime trail user in Walnut Creek in both Shell Ridge and Lime Ridge. And I just wanted to first say thank you so much to staff and to the committee for your work tonight, as well as prior to put this set of recommendations forward. I think that it's a really inclusive report and approach, and I'm grateful for the consideration of mountain bikers, as well as language like flow and considerations of ecological impact, providing opportunities to all trail users. As a mountain bike rider, I certainly regret that there have been certain social trails that have damaged our parks, but stand ready as someone who cares about these sites and opportunities for everyone to use them, to assist and volunteer, and as the prior speaker said, do some heavy lifting. I certainly stand ready to do that. I would just urge the committee tonight to implement these recommendations, to approve them. And I really believe that in doing so, you will open up opportunities to address that sort of 6%, 6 to 15% who may not be as courteous of trail users, to really bring them in and show them what the true value of these parks are, why they're so important to us, and instill in them a drive to conserve and to help make them these trails better. And anyway, I think that would be really effective. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for your work. And I'll again urge the implementation of these recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Alexis Zimmer.
Alexis, you're currently muted.
Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. It's Adam, by the way. I'm from Bay Point, California. I've been riding in Lime Ridge for 15, 20 years. I am one of those conscientious mountain bikers. I try to do my best. Yes, I am known to go on the single track that I shouldn't be on, but I do use my brakes. When I see people, I get out of their way. I try to be the best that I can while riding. So I love what you guys did. Having those flow trails, get some mountain bikers away from other people, would be fantastic. Looking at Crockett Hills, I ride out there a lot. Those flow trails work out fantastically well. I think they would be awesome out there. We can all do our best. I work in the bike shops, so I try to help teach some people maybe how to act out there. We all have to love the trails, hikers, equestrians, cyclists. We all have to get along, and I do my best to be an upstanding cyclist out there. I try, and I think these improvements will be fantastic, and I love what you guys did out there.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Robert Chow.
Hello. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So my name is Robert Chow, and I ride Shell Ridge quite a bit, sometimes Lime Ridge. I ride with my son. I also hike there with my wife. So I really think that it's about time we look at mountain bikers as a use case, as a user group. They're increasing, especially amongst the young people. It's a great activity. And, we have plenty of evidence in other parts of the country that we can come up with rules, whether it's alternate days or one-way only trails or bike-specific trails. There's ways to make it work so everybody can share and enjoy the place. Even nearby communities like Pleasanton has added multi-use trails in recent times and are even talking about a one-way trail to separate bikers that are coming down from hikers that are going up. And that's great. I just think that it's about time. And to address some of the comments previously, yeah, there's some kids riding illegally, but the problem is that they're not learning from responsible adults. Because you tell them you can't ride anything but fire roads, they're going to go off and ride whatever they want. And you don't want them to learn that way by themselves. And they're going to go and progress to building illegal trails, and probably not sustainably. So part of the problem is just saying no is not the right solution. When it comes to equestrian, same thing. I tell my son to stop, ask when it's okay to pass. When it comes to horses, slow down for hikers. And we do that. We gladly do that. But when you see hikers saying, you know, I'm afraid, I don't want to share, it's when they run up to people that are angry, it's because they are frustrated. It's because they're treated as second citizens and they can't have access. If you give them access, separate the two, or even in parts that they do share, when they feel like they're being listened to as well, then they can be courteous. I'm serious. I think it's the other users need to take some responsibility. Just saying education is not enough. Well, what does that mean? Flyers? Rangers? No, education doesn't have to cost money because the kids can learn from the adults. If you have trails where adults can ride with youngsters, they can learn from the adults and learn to appreciate the trails and the open spaces, not cheap talk. It's actually getting out there. So my son and I, we go out there and we've done trail maintenance. We've done trail maintenance not only for potential bike trails, but for hiking trails. So you do that by involving your community, involving your users, not just saying no. So I really encourage you guys to really move forward with more open-minded view of mountain bikers, somehow including them. Like I said, alternative days, different types of trails, etc. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Our next speaker is Karen Diaz.
Hi, my name is Karen Dees, and I am a longtime trail user, hiking and trail running. And I want to say, first of all, thanks for an excellent report. I think you guys did a great job. And my experience over the past 20 years has been that mountain bikers are generally very respectful. They do move off the single tracks, and I appreciate that. The one aspect that seems to have been missed in the report is nighttime usage of the trails. We have a easement through our own property whereby bikers use and hikers use the property. And often they come down at night at very high speeds with lights on their bikes. And it's frankly quite dangerous. If I'm walking on my driveway and mountain bikers come hurtling past at night. So if signage could be added, if consideration could be given to try and encourage the mountain bikers not to be there at night is the point that I would add. But like the others, I'm very happy to be a volunteer, and I think that's a great way to have the community be more responsible in general. So thank you, the trails are wonderful.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Darren Roston.
Darren, you're currently muted.
Hi, my name is Darren Roston. I work in the county as a firefighter. I'm a father of 4 young boys. I live in Martinez, right on the border of Pleasant Hill. I'm an avid mountain biker, and I represent a group of about 30 dads and moms. And we have a large contingency of young kids, and a lot of them are riders. Lime Ridge is one of our favorite places to go. And we are just excited with a prospect of some bike-friendly trails. Obviously, with the onset of COVID, we are no longer swimming. We are no longer playing baseball or soccer or flag football, or all the things that a dad with 4 kids under 10 does. So we've been doing a lot of mountain biking. We're going up to Stafford Lake Park. We're going up to Truckee a lot. We're going to a lot of places where mountain biking is seen as a good thing. And it's kind of a sad state of occurrences of what's happening here in the East Bay. But there are some things on the horizon. The Pleasant Hill Bike Park, the Lime Ridge open space changing. These are great things that can change the culture. And Walnut Creek being a very progressive city and stepping forward and doing things, I think this will change the culture for the whole Bay Area. And in that, I think it will ease up on some of the trail usage that we're seeing. Although we do, I'm sure you guys are excited about the increase in trail usage. If other surrounding agencies can take some heed from what you guys are doing and open up some trails, I think it would just be good for everybody involved. So thank you so much. And we're just excited. I have me and my boys are ready to get out there with shovels. Just tell us where to start digging.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you.
And I'm a mountain biker. I'm a road cyclist, environmental engineer, runner, and I really like that the committee is considering increasing access for mountain bikers in Shell Ridge and Lime Ridge. I appreciate the committee developing the report and having an open mind with additional mountain bike use in the community. The trails should be for multi-use because this is open space. Mountain bikers in the San Francisco Bay Area have very limited trails available. And I would like to point out though that there are a few examples of parks in the area that have multi-use. Rockville Park in Fairfield, Joaquin Miller Park, and Demonstration Forest in Santa Cruz. I would like to see the report talks about evaluating the trails for multi-use. There's many miles of trails in both Shell Ridge and Lime Ridge that mountain bikers would classify as single track. I'd like to see how these trails are going to be evaluated to potentially change use from a hiking only trail to allow mountain bikers. The 4-foot minimum width, I don't believe that should exclude the multi-use classification. There's examples. Joaquin Miller has trails that are less than 4 feet wide and it's multi-use. Rockville Park has trails less than 4 feet wide and it's multi-use. Regarding safety, I totally agree. Safety is very important for both mountain bikers and hikers and all users. The most important issue with safety is sight distance and a proper trail design. If the mountain bikers can see a hiker, I mean, they will stop and get out of the way, and at least I will. Just final comment, as most people have stated, mountain bikers are responsible and courteous. We really appreciate the committee having the open mind, and you're going to get a lot of support from the mountain biking community regarding this effort. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Next speaker is Paula Santerior.
Paula, you're currently muted. Paula, you continue to be muted. You're no longer muted, but we can't hear anything. Still are unable to hear you.
We put Paula back in the queue and we're going to bring in Tommy Greenless.
Tommy, you're currently muted.
Hi, thanks so much for your report, and thanks, Mike, for the presentation. One thing that is crucial for success on mountain bike trails is great signage. Right now, it seems like there's a gray area on what's open, what's not, and as a mountain biker, a hiker, a runner, I've used the trails. I've lived in Walnut Creek for 15 years. And, you know, as we talk about the 5 to 10% that break the rules, it frustrates me so much. Even yesterday, I was up on the Ridge Trail in Shell Ridge and a mountain biker passed. And I said, hey, I'm a mountain biker too. You're making us all look bad. And he just kind of said, thanks, and acted like he didn't hear me. That's what we need to eliminate. So I've noticed some of the signs, the little biker signs with the red arrow going through them, they've been picked off, which is also frustrating. So again, clear signage, directional signs are so important, and enforcement. Up in Bend, Oregon, I was riding up there this year, and the signs were labeled green for beginners, blue for intermediate, black for you know, advanced, just like a ski run, and also directional, whether they're two-way trails, so you know people might be coming, or, you know, big red X for, you know, do not enter. And that'll be really nice on the flow trails, and I'm really excited for those. As many people have said before, we're ready to come help volunteer as mountain bikers. Like Nadine said earlier, maybe having different days, because speed is such a crucial element of safety. And, you know, if it's a, you know, Monday, Wednesday thing or a Tuesday, Thursday thing, that can be so important. So again, directions and enforcement of the the no mountain bikers on certain trails, because as a hiker with a dog, I don't want mountain bikers on those trails, even though I'm a cyclist as well. So thank you so much for your time and giving us a chance to talk, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Oren.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, I'm Oren Ryak, an avid mountain biker, and I live in Walnut Creek, about 100 yards away from a Shell Ridge trailhead. Mountain bikers love single track. So I would encourage consideration of single track trails just for bikers. An example of this would be like Toro Regional Park in Salinas, where they have a mountain bike only single track trail, and it's a one directional trail. And this would get the bikes off of the trails they're not supposed to be on and reduce the creation of unauthorized trails. And so I hope you guys would give some consideration to this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
At this time, we do not have any hands raised. There was a couple, I know there was one speaker that we couldn't get in, so if she was interested in coming back. Oh, okay, we have one more hand raised. So maybe if I could, Commissioner or Chair Oler, is that this is sort of the last call for folks that want to raise their hand and have the opportunity to speak?
Yes.
Okay, and then speaker coming in is Bobby Meyer.
Hi, everybody. I'm very grateful for the time to speak tonight. I've listened to all of the comments, and I have given this careful consideration before chiming in, because I am actually a member of the enemy. I'm one of the people that are out there with shovels in hand and making trails. I'm not going to tell you where we're making trails, but the reason that we're making trails is because nobody's providing them for us. We are a very large community of people, very large community of men, women, and children that enjoy riding mountain bikes on single track trails. And if you do not provide us with those trails or the access to those trails, we will build them ourselves. I've got my name and my email on this publicly, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but the reality is that there is a very large community of people that want to ride bicycles, mountain bikes specifically, on single track trails. And the fact that we are compromising the ability for a very large population of people to enjoy that outdoor activity for all of the different reasons that we've heard illustrated tonight seems kind of counterproductive to the fact that there's a very large community of people that want to enjoy the outdoor space around the East Bay area and are going to do so by whatever means necessary. And if that means building our own trails, then we're going to have to build our own trails. And we don't want to be outlaws out there doing this and be against the population. That is never our intent. We simply want to enjoy the outdoors like everybody else.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Suzanne.
Suzanne, you're currently muted. Suzanne, you're still muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I sent a letter in and I'm going to read it really quickly. I'm an equestrian. I've been here for 35 years. The population growth is seen and felt everywhere. As an avid equestrian, I've witnessed the ever-increasing number of hikers, dogs, and bikers accessing the trails over the last decade. I disagree with your trail committee report stating there's fewer equestrians. I still see quite a few equestrians out there. And if you think there's less, quite a few people are afraid to come out in the trails because of the bikers, just like the gentleman that you just had on. He would be the example of that 5 to 8% that we come across on the trails. It only takes one of those guys to get us killed. So I hope you keep the safety thought in mind. Also, if these trails are opened up to these bikers, it's going to create more of a mecca and more of a draw to have these people come out to our area. And secondly, if we ever do get any rain, Shell Ridge is inundated with bicyclists because of the great footing out there. Sometimes you just can't blink and not have 2 or 3 more bicyclists go by you in the winter weather in Shell Ridge. Anyway, and there probably are about 500 horses that are boarded and kept in the Council Rock area and Northgate Road. So there's a lot of us out there, we're watching this meeting, but people are afraid to speak up and I can't stand it any longer. So just because the bikers have all got their hand up to speak out, don't forget the equestrians. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Our next speaker is John Roberts.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. For a moment, I thought I dropped off at the worst possible time. I apologize. My name is John Roberts. I actually live in Piedmont, not in the area, but I do want to say that I've been very involved in this discussion over time, and I'm involved in trail work. I mountain bike. I started off as an equestrian when I was 12 and did that a lot. Eventually, at some point, I injured my knee and I cannot enjoy outdoors without the low impact process of mountain biking. I'm 51, so I'm not really into jumps or anything like that. I have a bell on my bike. I tend to yield to others when I encounter them on the trail. I think Joaquin Miller, which was mentioned earlier, is in Oakland. It's a very large city, very heavy use, and that is an example of a multi-trail system where there's a Friends of Joaquin Miller, there's a lot of involvement from the park users, dog walkers, equestrians, and there's involvement. It's an example. It's kind of, if you were to take New York and Central Park, very impacted park, but because of involvement and everyone providing trail work, that type of thing, and meetings and getting together, it's an example that works, and I think it's more fitting than a very huge East Bay Regional Park District. It's a very, very big park, almost too big to manage. So if you were to adopt rules, I would say one that's more focused on the users and the people that are willing to support, whether it's habitat or various types of use of the park. I ride with my family. We have 3 kids. We all go riding sometimes, so it's definitely a family sport. I want to say there's not a lot of riding in the Bay Area, and it's really unfortunate to mountain bikers pay taxes just like everyone else. The last thing I wanted to say was e-bikes. I have a son who can't ride with me unless he was on an e-bike. So I would, just the last thing about e-bikes is if someone's handicapped, they're preteen or they're senior citizens, and they're riding with a mountain biker, staying within that group, I think that some consideration should be given because it allows for the socialization, the continuation of, for example, older riders to continue riding with their group once hopefully COVID is over. Anyway, thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your comments tonight.
Our next speaker is Barry.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much for all of your efforts. This has been a long time coming. I'm a resident of Walnut Creek for more than 30 years. I've been riding all that time, come from the South Bay and riding around the Santa Cruz Mountains. And I'll just say that, echo what a lot of folks have said, is that, you know, I'd hate to see us go in with blinders. That doesn't work in other communities. Many people have mentioned Joaquin Miller. I personally have ridden at Rockville Park up in Green Valley, and that's an excellent example of where mountain biking works on single track trails with hikers. I appreciate the questions. I honestly don't see a lot of them, and I appreciate that they may be nervous sometimes to go out. I do see a tremendous amount of trail damage from equestrians that go out in the in the wet conditions, and seems to me that's a considerable trail hazard for senior citizens, things like that could trip on things like that. Honestly, I see more trail damage from that than other areas. I absolutely am against anybody building trails and building jumps and destroying habitat. But I think as the gentleman that called that said he is doing that, I think he's exactly right in that if you give them opportunities to ride maybe on certain days where it's legal only for mountain bikers, or one directional going downhill or what have you on certain days for mountain bikers and not other days, it gives you the opportunity to be more forceful on your enforcement and without allowing warnings, things like that. And as other folks said, with signage, that can help in that regard as well. But we know this works throughout the Bay Area, and we know it works throughout the country. I'm staring at a book right now that's from 1990. It's called Mountain Biking's North Lake Tahoe's Best Trails. It's all legal trails. Mountain biking is a real deal, and certainly appreciate your efforts, but it's time to move into the the 21st century. Thank you all.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker is Adam Van Winkle.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you guys for your time, ladies and gentlemen. I live in Brentwood. I grew up in Antioch. I grew up riding in the Black Diamond Mines Regional Park, and I did not enjoy riding bikes there, and I still don't really, because of the type of trails that bikes are relegated to there. I can't go with my kids there really. There's a few spots we can go, but most of it is very steep fire roads, which means very difficult to get up and then dangerous to come down because of how fast they are. So we do travel to Lime Ridge. I've actually been out there for trail work days, and my kids really enjoy both Joaquin Miller Park and Lime Ridge. It's much more accessible, and I feel like people of all skill levels can enjoy Lime Ridge. And yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you for even considering such a thing, because as somebody else stated earlier, bikes are kind of treated like second-class citizens. We're not treated fairly in a lot of places. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
The next speaker is Liz Keys.
Hey guys, it's actually Chris Fargo here speaking on behalf of Liz Keys. Avid mountain biker here in Walnut Creek. I've lived here for 8 years. Have been pleasantly surprised by what is available here. And I am also one of these people that are poaching some of the single track that's out there, and I shouldn't be, and quite honestly, I shouldn't have to. Mountain bikers can be stewards of these trails. We can have a positive impact on these trails and the environment. And I feel like we need to move in that direction, and we need to allow the mountain biking community to kind of shine and show what we're capable of and show what we can bring to this community. There are also several areas within California and beyond that have done this and have proved that equestrians, hikers, bicyclists can all work together, and it can in some ways become somewhat of a symbiotic relationship, even coming down to the environment. Montana de Oro in San Luis Obispo County is a perfect example. A lot of equestrians out there, a lot of hikers, a lot of bicyclists out there. Bicyclists are encouraged to wear bells to let both hikers and equestrians know that they're coming around the corner. These things are it's little things that can be done, and then cyclists aren't treated as lepers out on the trail, and then we don't get into these confrontations. We don't. And in fact, in Montana de Oro, as an example, like, I don't know how many times I've had very good conversations with people on their horses, and they're respected down there. And that can occur here, and we can all be one happy family and not get into these situations where people are out building illegal trails, which are going to damage the environment. Absolutely, 100% going to damage the environment. And I don't want to see that happen. But if we don't have a place to play, it's going to happen. So let's just kind of get on board with how we can make this all work. There are a lot of different areas that have done this in the past, and we can use those as examples, and just go from there. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the platform, for my voice to be heard.
Appreciate your comments tonight.
Our next speaker is Maddie.
Yes. Yes.
We can hear you.
Hello. Oh, good.
You just-
Yeah, I'm a Concord resident for about 48 years. I think mountain bikes definitely have a place up in the open space. They deserve their rights to ride up there. My big issue is the nighttime riders. I think if the mountain bikers were really wanted to play by the rules and be safe, they would limit their nighttime riding. The parks close at dusk. And to be honest, the bright lights of these bikes can't be good for the wildlife, and they can't be enjoying the high speeds and lights flying around the hills all night when they're trying to either hunt or eat. So I think the mountain bikers, they could follow some rules at night.
I think we lost him. He's back. You have a few seconds left if you have any further comments, Maddie.
I'm all good. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Andrew Turnbull.
Takes a moment to get promoted. First of all, I want to speak on behalf of the equestrians here for a minute, because there are more horse owners in the state of California than any other state in the union. There are more horses in Texas, but there are more horse owners in California owning fewer horses, because most of us own 1, 2, or 3 horses for recreation. The other thing is that in the horse owner community, it's largely women, and it's the biggest demographic are women who have finish having children. And one of the reasons why you're hearing that you're not seeing as many of them is because they're scared. I heard a couple of people mention it tonight. Now, I'm on a horse that I trail ride all the time. He's very well trained. I've had to have my horse back off of a bicyclist that had to drop his bike in front of me. But I've also seen that there's been a lot of really good people in terms of wanting to share with me. And so I don't have a trouble with us accommodating somehow the mountain bikers that want to be here. But there's a word that I read in your report that I didn't see in the report tonight, and that's enforcement. We can't afford, those of us on horses riding a half-ton bunny rabbit on a string who's not prepared for to be accosted by something it thinks is a predator. We can get really hurt. And we put a lot into our horses. We put a lot into this. And I think the reason you don't see the horses there, or as many as there should be, is you've scared them off. And I think you need to use enforcement. And if I can say one more word, it's enforcement. May the horse be with you.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Paula.
Paula, you're currently muted. Still muted, Paula.
Hello.
There you go. There you go.
Hi. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to consider the mountain bikes on the single track trails. And I'm here as a homeowner, taxpayer in Walnut Creek. And I've been riding mountain bikes about 30 years. I've ridden all over the country. And as some of those speakers have said, you know, this is not cutting edge. There's plenty of examples you can point to that show mountain bikers, horses, and hikers all getting along on the same trails. So I'd like to encourage that, you know, to go forward. And I think the one key thing here to consider is for when, you know, if this does go through, for the committee to work with professional trail development people who can make trails that are fun and people want to ride. I ride for enjoyment of the outdoors, for fitness, and to have fun. And I think all those would be enhanced by working with professionals who know what they're doing, because otherwise you're going to get into the situation where you have now, where it's whack-a-mole. You close one trail, something else pops up. And that's what people want. They want fun, enjoyable trails. You know, this is not terrain really where people are going to be bombing down the hills a lot. I go to Downeyville and I bomb down the hills, and I pay $20 for a shuttle ride to the top. And that's fine because all the traffic is going in one direction. And the only people that are out there are motorcycles and bicycles. Here, I think, you know, this is an urban setting and people know that they're going to encounter others. But if they're aware of it and they have places that are fun to ride, like these alternatives, I think that's great. And even the Tahoe trail system, they use the even odd day. So those are all things to consider to try to alleviate some of the conflicts. And then if everybody can just get along, which is, I think, the point that one speaker was trying to make, you know, we can all enjoy the wonderful open space in Walnut Creek. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Our next speaker is Elizabeth Hudson. Sorry, I think our next speaker is Chris Hunter. Oh, no, it is Elizabeth Hunter. Sorry, Elizabeth Hudson.
Elizabeth, we're not hearing you. It doesn't appear you're muted, though. Now you're muted. Unmuted, but not hearing you. Still can't hear you, Elizabeth.
We're going to try the next speaker, and that is Chris Hunter.
Chris, you're currently muted.
Hi, this is Phil and Chris Klotzbach, avid hiker, runner, and former cyclist till I crashed one too many times on road. But what I want to talk about was, obviously we've seen a lot of increased use in the last 8-9 months. And, you know, basically I think what we've seen a lot of is like when you want to ride single track, 100% on board, you can ride single track, especially if you have a bell so people can hear you coming, especially if you're going really quickly. But is the cutting of the switchbacks, if you're riding single track, the switchbacks are there for a reason, but it's like they just, like if you're going to cut switchbacks, that degrades the trail. And when it does rain, you're going to see significant trail degradation. The other day we saw a cyclist riding through the dry creek bed because they didn't want to go up over the little hill. And obviously just because the creek bed's dry doesn't mean stuff isn't living in there. And these aren't, you know, these aren't 12-year-old kids. These are people 40, 50, 60 years old that really should know better that are doing this. And also what you witness is like on, say, for example, the Indian Creek Trail, they put up a fence, said not a trail, and they just moved the trail like 10 feet over and then just went straight down there. So these people obviously, you know, the people that are doing that know better. And obviously there's a tremendous number of cyclists that obey the rules, ride the trails, and that's awesome. But I think really there needs to be a little bit more enforcement of the people that are cutting the switchbacks and doing those things that do degrade the trails, because if the trails get degraded, it ruins the experience, whether you want to ride, run, hike, ride a horse. And also too, I think another thing that should be really talked about is also speed enforcement, or speed, just maintaining a safe speed, because we've had several times where bikes have nearly crashed into us at probably 20, 25 miles an hour. And obviously, having been in crashes on the bike before, I can tell you whether your bike crashes with anything, the bike always loses. So I think that kind of stuff, I think, would make it for a much better trail experience. And if you go to like Untitled State Park up in Santa Rosa, tons of cyclists, hikers, horseback, and it seems to go really, really well. So I think it can work.
Well, thank you for your comments.
We are not seeing any more hands raised. So I think at this point that we could potentially wait. I was going to say close the public comment, but maybe not. Oh, okay. Leslie Hunt is coming back in.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Leslie.
Good. It takes a moment. They're right. We've heard a lot of suggestions tonight, a lot of them very good ones. And that is what I think those of us who've thought about this and worked on it have hoped to see. I'd like to say a few words about the environment, because I've heard as more than I expected, but not quite as much as I'd like to, I guess. The open space was bought for its environment, among other things, and we will not have either native plants or native animals if we don't take care of the native plants and the habitat that we've got. We need to emphasize those rules, because frequently those native plants grow right by the edges of trails, and when they're made wider, the plants are gone, and the insects and the small animals and so on, the whole food chain they support disappears. There is, I think, a lot of good ideas. I'm sure the staff will go through these, all this talk and winnow them all out and make a pile and start through them. I think one of the first things we need to do is try to build a culture of cooperation, because we haven't had one, as many people have pointed out. I think we need to take it slow and try things out. And then if we as we try things and we need to evaluate them, take time to adjust if we need to, find a new direction. In the end, I think that we do need to have enforcement as a last resort for those people who won't listen. And I hope that we'll be able to find a new and more cooperative culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate your comments.
So with that, Chair, we have one speaker, but they've already spoken tonight. So we're not allowing a second time around. So with that, I would suggest that you close the public comment.
So we're going to close public comment on this agenda item. And before we move into commissioner comments, I wanted to ask or poll the commission whether we need say a 5-minute break or something, or how do you feel about moving forward? Is everybody good to continue?
I vote
Okay.
we continue.
We'll continue. So I open it up to commissioner comments. I did want to say one word before I do that, though. Just so the public is aware that we received nearly 24 letters in comments on this agenda item. And we appreciate everybody that took the time to do that as well. So thank you for your comments there. And I neglected to mention that there was one letter received for the general public commentary as the first agenda item that was received, and it was regarding pickleball situation. So you all have that, commissioners, but I wanted to mention that in public. So who would care to make some comments?
Sorry, Robert, I saw your hand go up. I already hit my unmute button. The only thing which I would like to just comment on is that I was, impressed is not the word I want to use, but not surprised either, but glad to hear a lot of our speakers tonight begin and or end with the volunteer spirit. And that actually goes to Commissioner Weston's point earlier, kind of wondering how you were going to pull this off. And I kind of think we should, thank everybody who made the point of saying they were ready, to get their shovels in the ground, so to speak. But we should really, use this as a momentum, because I think there's quite a bit. This could have been a more of a contentious meeting, I guess, and there's never going to be a happy, we're always going to be working towards that happy medium. And I think this was a really good start. And I think that a lot of the people that are willing to volunteer, well, we're going to call you out on that, and we're going to, take advantage of it. And I think that there's a lot of momentum that we can build based on what we've heard tonight. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that kind of threw their hat in the ring. Because I think it's going to take everybody working together to make this something that we can all live with. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kearsley.
Yeah, I too want to make a couple comments ever so briefly. I want to echo what Commissioner Moran just said about the speakers tonight, having people willing to contribute. Without your input, it's hard for us to understand or gauge where the emphasis should be, what considerations, and so on. So thank you all for your participation tonight. I did want to address something very specific on under the recommendations section under volunteer patrol program suggestion recommendation. I fully support that, and I just wanted to illustrate something that I had read on it and had learned before, and it may have been a consideration by this committee, so bear with me. But there is in Oakland something called the Park Patrol, and it's a group of volunteers that started this in 2015. And these volunteers cover 3 specific parks in Oakland. One of them was mentioned this evening, Joaquin Miller Park. And among the many duties that these volunteers hold are they welcome visitors to the park. They assist users with questions that they might have as they enter the park areas. They have maps with them in case someone asks them something. They also help park users understand park rules, regulations, and trail etiquette. They also report issues to the city on trails, issues such as trail degradation, safety issues, and when necessary, particularly those parks, if there's some evidence of criminal activity in those parks. They also collaborate with other groups, such as bike groups and other park users and so on. And now they're working with the Oakland police, particularly the community service police, and taking them on hikes to kind of show them the area and get them familiar with the area, and also be a presence just to be known to the users. They also, in terms of being a volunteer for that park patrol, they're required to do a one-time 3-hour training session to become part of that. And the budget for that activity is $5,000 a year. That includes t-shirts for the park patrol members. There is no designated days that park patrol volunteers have to participate, other than they do require 4 hours per month. So I just bring up these things because as this idea of a volunteer patrol program is kind of vetted, I would strongly look at Oakland's effort as consideration or as a model for Walnut Creek. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Any additional comments? Commissioner
Okay.
Weston?
Yeah, just briefly, I'd like to echo what everybody else was saying. And it was very encouraging to see both through all of the emails and correspondence that we got at 4 o'clock this afternoon, which I did manage to read through, and all of the folks participating tonight, that there is a spirit of cooperation and that we really need to work and feed on that and bring people together. And that's what's going to solve a lot of what's going on, as we get people to understand all the different sides and show that they are heard. And in that spirit, when we talk about enforcement, there was some talk about fines or whatever, but if we would consider, well, I'll just throw it out as the word community service. If you find somebody that's not really doing what they should be, you get them into one of the volunteer programs where they have to work and see what needs to be done to undo the damage that they are doing, which is probably why they are being looked at or potentially fined. So that's just one aspect of it. I really want to see us move forward faster, not slower. I think there's a lot to do with education and cooperation. And while we've got the momentum, I think we should move just as quickly as we can.
All right.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be part of this committee. And first, I just want to say thank you so much to Mike for bringing the team together and Corey for pulling together the report. A lot of work went into this. And I think it was really an impactful process because it really was nice to have a number of stakeholders involved in the creation of these recommendations. And I think as we heard from the community tonight, it feels that a lot of those perspectives and voices were there at the table as we're sorting through these things. I think there was an acknowledgement that again, it's like you can't make everyone happy all the time, but really just trying to come up with recommendations that really make sense for both protecting our environment, but also making the open space accessible and enjoyable to the residents and people that use it. I also just wanted to say thank you to everyone who wrote comments. All the 27 pages of comments really shows that our community is really passionate about these issues, and it's just really nice to see the investment people have in our open space. So I hope people will recommend that we accept the recommendations in this trail report. I think the staff have been remarkably responsive. I think I would also encourage them to read some of the details that are mentioned in the both written comments that were raised tonight. I think as this is a work in progress, you know, some of the finer grained issues we might be able to resolve if there's some little typos or something about the number of feet in the single track trail. But other than that, I think overall it's really a step forward. They really are recommendations. It's not prescriptive. It's more trying to outline a process for us to make some decisions and really move forward to thinking through the use of our trails and making sure that they're accessible to everyone. So again, but thank you so much to both the city staff, a tremendous job, but also to all the public that made comments and are also involved in this process.
Thank you, Vice Chair Davenport. I'll make some comments. I'll try to keep them brief and not repeat what others have said, except that I have to repeat the thank yous both to the public in both their written comments and their willingness to stay on board with us as we got through 29 speakers, which was great. And while we anticipated a lot of comments tonight, I think what we didn't anticipate is how much everybody made their comments in the spirit of trying to improve the conditions of the open space in so many ways, and improve the user experience, if you will. And I think a lot of the credit for getting those positive comments is the hard work of the staff in shepherding the committee through the process. You know, the committee had representatives that that you really have heard the echoes of those representatives in the comments tonight by the public, whether it's equestrians, bikes, mountain bikes, hikers, and people that use it in different ways, running, whatever, even live close to the park enough where they see the impact of the users in positive ways and unfortunately some in negative ways. But I think that by building the consensus on the committee, in the same way, I think having people had the opportunity to speak tonight and to write their comments, it's an opportunity to help build consensus for what we really need to do in our open space. And it's captured in the 5 recommendations that have been proposed as part of this project. And I see those 5 as really integrated, just like the committee was integrated. It really, if we don't all work together and have a common purpose and build the volunteer spirit and build the education and build new trails and close trails that are not working in many different environmental ways. If we don't do all of that, we're not going to be successful. You know, if we're missing some component of that, it's not going to work. And we'll be back at this again much too soon. So, you know, as a commission, I think it's very important that we support it and hear how things are going and try to push for funding where we can, when we can, to help this along. So I enthusiastically support the recommendations, and thank you all for your consideration tonight. So if there are no further commission comments, I think it's appropriate now to take the recommendations to vote. So do I have a motion for that?
I move to approve the recommendations in the trail report.
Seconded.
Secretary Ballinger?
Was there a comment? I'm sorry.
No, I was just asking for a vote, yeah, for the roll, yeah.
Prior to the roll, can we just see the recommendations one more time so we know exactly, and the public that's looking on can see exactly
Sure.
what we're voting on?
Yeah, can we get that up?
Share the screen. You need to share the screen and come back to that last slide. I think that's on the last. Mike, you want to just?
Yes, thank you, Heather. What I had mentioned earlier, because I didn't give a very thorough report on the sixth recommendation there in regards to support open space ranger enforcement, as long as it's okay with Director Bellinger, I would like to bring that back to the commission at our February meeting and be able to give you more of a detailed report on what enforcement looks like and get your feedback at that time. So in regards to the other 5, we are looking for your support on each of those. I can read each one and then we can give a thumbs up. Or if that's not needed, we can just give a thumbs up for all 5. How do you want me to address it, Chair Oler?
I think we can vote as the package.
Okay.
And if someone has anything they don't want to support within that, we can hear at the time of their vote.
Okay, so is it agreeable that the motion would be that you would be supporting the first 5 and that the 6th one would come back for consideration at a later meeting?
Yeah, I think we should go through the motion process again on that, so everybody's clear. Do I hear a motion to support the first 5 priorities and recommendations and withhold the 6th until it is reviewed at a further pros commission meeting?
Okay, yeah, I move to accept the first 5 recommendations in the Walnut Creek Open Space Trail Committee recommendations for managing trails report.
Seconded.
Okay, can I call the roll?
Yes, please.
Okay, Vice Chair Davenport,
Yes.
Commissioner Kearsley,
Yes.
Commissioner Moran,
Yes.
Commissioner Weston,
Yes.
and Chair Oler.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is commission announcements or brief reports on activities. Do any commissioners have any updates to share?
Yeah, Chair Oler, I'd just like to thank Friends of the Creek, especially Leslie Hunt, for sponsoring an event in Civic Park last month for the boys team charity, whereby a group of us cleared ivy away from various trees down in the creek. And with the exception of myself and one other person who got a severe case of poison oak, it was a successful event. Thanks again to all who participated.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? I wanted to, I have 2 thank yous that are related. One is to the Open Space Commission or Foundation, excuse me. They have started a program this fall to try to engage families working in the open space on a multi-month project to identify locations and then follow through with plantings of oak acorns and with protective screening once we start to get significant improvement in our rainfall patterns. And I just think it's a perfect type of project to engage a different demographic in volunteer work there and to create hopefully long-term open space supporters, and also to do an activity that is a volunteer activity for a group in these restricted times where it's so difficult. Being outdoors, everybody still wears masks for these these projects, and it's been fun to be a part of that. And the second thing I wanted to do is to thank the rangers of our open space in their efforts to get volunteer groups to work on Fridays and other times and weekends on some of the trail closures, some of the trail changes. I know there are other groups that participate as well, but Walnut Creek people are being involved in the volunteer work. And so I wanted to do a shout out for our rangers and our staff who are working side by side on those projects. All right. If I have no other commissioners that want to make comments, then we're going to move to the staff announcements or brief reports on activities.
Kevin Safine is coming in.
I am. Hello, commissioners. I appreciate you guys doing a great job without even taking a break. I'll make this brief. And Heather, I'm not sure if you're going to talk about the restrictions and the
Kevin, you're freezing up.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay. I told my kids to get off, and they don't listen. Heather, I didn't know if you were going to talk about the response to the health restrictions, or if you wanted me to. Okay. With all the changes to the various health orders in the past 8 months, but really even the past 2 weeks, in the past couple of days, this has been really trying to be as responsive as we can to the limitations. Heather's been leading this, but there's specific changes that you should just be aware of with regard to recreation programs for the most part. And they're not many changes from where we've been for the past several months. The pools are still open. The pool is still open. The golf course is still open. There's still activities taking place in the parks. We are working to try to understand the specific restrictions that the county is placing on things like team recreational activities. It's a little bit confusing, so we're trying to work through that. I'm not going to give you any specifics. We need to take the time with that, but I would say that if you hear from the community and people are saying, why is this being allowed, or what's going on, you can send them to Heather or to me, and we'd be happy to talk to folks in the community, because sometimes there's a lack of understanding on our part on what the restrictions are in the community. The best example is something like doubles tennis or doubles pickleball. The county's been pretty clear that's not allowed, but you still see it played on a lot of the outlying courts, and we're just not taking the steps to enforce that outside of the Heather Farm Tennis Center and the Red Gear Park, because those are things that we're more actively managing. If you see things like that or hear things about that, just reach out to us, and we'd be happy to talk to you, because it's evolving so much that it's hard to say specifically what's happening today is going to be what's happening tomorrow. But I will offer that between Heather's staff, Mike specifically, and then my staff on the recreation side, we've been doing a great job, not just in terms of managing what can't be done, but more importantly, what can be done. So there's lots of things that are happening that you'll see in our guide, in our e-news, and other just activities throughout the community. So thank you for your continuing support of this. And Heather, thank you for your partnership, and Mike with us on this. So that's my report.
Thank you, Kevin. And I'll just add that the playgrounds in the recent order are mandated to be closed. So Mike is in the process of getting fencing and or barricades and or caution tape around all the playgrounds in the parks. Mike, I don't know if there's anything more you wanted to add on that.
Yeah, Kevin did a great job explaining it. One of the challenges with the new health orders is there are some activities that up until recently have not been allowed, such as basketball. So basketball is now called out as an activity that can be played, but it's with members of your own household, which makes it very, very challenging for whether it's the recreation team or the public works team. Hopefully we don't need to get PD involved in these types of situations. It's just, as you guys, what we're trying to share with you, they've made some of these restrictions a little bit difficult to manage, and we're going to continue to do the best we can. But it's, you know, we're hoping that people police themselves and wear their masks and socially distance and follow those rules. So, thank you.
Kevin, do you have any other staff announcements from any of your other team? Back to you, Chair Oler.
Okay, I guess that's it for staff announcements or reports. So we will now move to adjourn the meeting. So this Pros Commission meeting for December 7th is now adjourned. Thank you for everyone for being here and going the distance.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.